name is Tunç Ali Kütükçüoğlu. I began writing blog articles about economy and environment in 2013, yes, almost 7 years ago. And in 2018, I started with a PhD in economy and ecology at the University of Corsica in France. And this is my short speech about my essay that I wrote for this symposium on economic thought. And the title of my essay is "What is Economics and What is it for?" I studied economics, conventional economics, almost 20 years ago. I started with this study in 2002 at the University of Zurich. It was quite conventional economics, yes, neoclassical economics. But I wasn't aware then that I was studying neoclassical economics. I thought at that time it is the only scientific theory and it's the only truth. But I was aware of some weird things in this study, like premature mathematization that I call today. But then I didn't know exactly how to call it, but I call it today premature mathematization, which is a term used often by Schumacher, the author of Small is Beautiful. And the other issue was ignoring the non-monetary of nature and society. In a sense, ignoring ecology and anthropology. Because if economy is about sustenance, human needs, covering human needs, so production, distribution to satisfy human needs, we have monetary production and non-monetary production. We have a monetary economy, which is about companies, households, money, state, and we have also a non-monetary economy, which is about society, for example, traditional villages. In a traditional village, people produced almost everything without money for their own consumption. Or the nature, for example. The living ecosystems produce fertile soils. For example, in marine ecosystems, tons of fish, forest products in forest ecosystems. So the economy is not only about money, it's also about non-monetary production and recycling, I told, but it's totally ignored with focus on money. Before economics, which is actually neoclassical economics, since the beginning of the 20th century, there was political economy. All the classical economic thinkers like Adam Smith, David Ricardo, Stuart Mill, Karl Marx, they all talked about political economy. So you may ask, what is the difference between political economy and economics? The difference is, yes, there's a big difference considering their scope and content. Compared to economics, now I'm reading in the essay, political economy has a much broader view to economy, including social and political realities of life, like economic history, power relations, alienation from work, product, society, and nature, imperialism, and exploitation. So the neoclassical economics that we learn in most universities today ignore that we have a global economic systems with winners and losers, with exploiters and exploited. And there are further differences between political economy and economics, or neoclassical economics. Political economy is more about verbal narration and qualitative analysis, whereas economics is heavily dominated by quantitative analysis and mathematics. So the question is, how did political economy become the dismal science of neoclassical economics? And this is closely related with premature mathematization, in my opinion. And the factors, the causes of premature mathematization were fivefold. First one, short-term and monetary business interests. Second, the domination of the human-centered, mechanistic and reductionist worldview. This worldview was also common to political economy. The third one, the fallacious utility optimizing zombie, which is Homo economicus. The independent, individualistic, rational consumer assumption, which is wrong. We know today this is wrong. We humans don't always think rationally, and we can't always think rationally. And we are also influenced by our society. We are not totally independent. 4, reduction of wealth and value to exchange value only. Exchange value is, in that case, market value, which is money. So use value was reduced to exchange value. It was a very important step. And this was done by the marginalists, who were also the pioneers of neoclassical economics, like Menger, Walras, Jevons. They reduced use value to money. And this is monetary reductionism. And then the mainstream economists began to measure everything with money. And GDP growth or economic growth is just an example of it. Monetary reductionism. And 5, physics envy or Newton envy. So the pioneers of neoclassical economics toward the 19th century believed that in order to be a respectable real science or hard science, economics should be a mathematical science, just like Newton science, Newton physics. So they worked on mathematization of economy, using all these fallacies or misleading assumptions. Let me give you some examples for these misleading assumptions. This is in my other article titled Misconceptions of Neoclassical Economics and Their Possible Causes. There's a table in this article on page 7. And in this table, I listed some of these misleading assumptions or misconceptions. Let me read you some of them. Monetary reductionism, growth obsession, GDP growth, as if economic growth were a real proxy for well-being, which is not. Technological optimism or fundamentalism, as if we could solve every social and ecological problem with technology. without changing the system at all. Business as usual, just new technologies. Ignoring imperialism, which means ignoring that we have a global economic system with losers and winners, exploited and exploiters. Premature mathematization, ignoring externalities or underestimating externalities. Free market fundamentalism, and so on. Even the official definitions of economics are sometimes misleading. Let me give you some examples from my essay, What is Economics and What is it for? On page 4. Yes. One of these official definitions, economics, a social science that deals with the production, distribution, consumption of goods and services. So something is missing here, and something is wrong or misleading. Recycling is missing. It should be production, recycling, distribution, and consumption of goods and services, because without recycling, we cannot have a sustainable economic system. So it's not only about the linear process of production. We need also a recycling. It's not only about production and consumption. We need to think what happens then. And we mustn't forget the primary recycler, primary producer, and primary recycler, which is nature. So a better definition could be, what is economics? An evolutionary and holistic meaning, trying to see the complete picture with social and ecological realities of life. An evolutionary and holistic human science that deals with human needs along with the reproduction, meaning production and recycling together, distribution and consumption of goods and services to satisfy human needs. And we should note here, nature, that is living ecosystems like oceans, forests, lakes, and rivers, is the primary producer and recycler. For example, nature produces fertile soils, millions of tons of fish, forest products, marine products, clean air, clean water, a stable climate, a stable atmosphere. Let's take another definition as an example of economics. This definition is shorter. Economics is study of how society uses its limited, scarce resources. Why should economics be only about scarce resources? Now I read a paragraph from the essay. History tells us seemingly unlimited resources like clean air, clean water, or fertile soils may easily become limited within time and vice versa. Luxuries of the past may become normalities of today and vice versa. For example, assets like winter and summer residence sites, stimulating natural and social environment and healthy organic food enjoyed by many traditional societies are luxuries today. For the majority of city dwellers, for the majority of the middle class. Hence, economics must consider all kinds of resources, limited and non-limited, living and non-living, considering complex social and ecological relationships and cycles with a long-term view into the past and future, which is historicity. So, there is a dynamic transition between scarce and abundant goods, depending partially on politics or economic policies. So we need to have a broad view to all kinds of resources in order to see the complete picture. A better definition could be, in this case, a study of how society uses its resources. Not limited with limited resources, simply a study of how society uses its limited and unlimited resources. So the theory and teaching of economics is in a serious crisis since 2000. In 2000, the students' protests began first in France and then continued with other protests, and it has become an international affair with new movements like rethinking economics. And about 65 student associations from more than 35 countries published on the internet. You can check isipe.org, isipe.net, an open letter about the current situation of economics education, and their complaints and suggestions can be summarized in 7 bullet points. This is in my article titled Misconceptions of Neoclassical Economics and Their Possible Causes on page 10. 7 points. This criticism, for example, in open letter, can be briefly summarized as follows. 1. Undergraduate education economics is dominated by the neoclassical paradigm in almost every country of the world and in almost every university of the world. Lack of pluralism and intellectual diversity. It's only about neoclassical theory, and other schools of economic thought like institutional economics or ecological economics, Austrian school, Marxist school are not mentioned at all in many cases. There are now some improvements in some universities, but that's not enough. Economics should become reality-based, not based on unrealistic abstract mathematical models and misuse of mathematics based on flawed assumptions. I can give you some examples for these flawed assumptions, but as I mentioned before, premature mathematization, as called by Schumacher in his book named Small is Beautiful. 4. Economics should be problem-led, not method-led. 5. Current economics teaching is based on a mechanical view of the world, as I mentioned, machine world paradigm or industrial paradigm. Quantitative analysis is overvalued at the cost of undervaluing qualitative analysis and qualitative lectures. 6. Threefold pluralism is required for analyzing real economics issues like unemployment. Threefold pluralism, they mean first, interdisciplinary and methodological pluralism. Second, reflexive pluralism, methods, assumptions, epistemology, history, complete view, philosophical thinking, different aspects. And theoretical pluralism, which means multiple schools of economics, economic thought. And the last one, 7, Almost nothing has changed since first student movement in Paris in 2000. It's really sad. I can confirm this with my own experience. Almost nothing has changed. The economics departments, actually, they don't want to change anything. They resist to changes, and there are different reasons for that. And finally, what must be done to improve the theory and education of economics, in addition to these suggestions of student associations like threefold pluralism? This is at the end of my essay. In my opinion, we must openly discuss the higher goals. Why do we learn economics? After all, what is the ultimate purpose? The higher goals are like sustainable well-being for all, including future generations, and then ecological stability, social stability, social justice, and then, for example, equity, economic equity. These are higher goals. And all these higher goals could be summarized actually with one phrase, which is sustainable well-being for all. I think it covers everything, all the higher goals. And then the question is, but in any case, this is my opinion. There could be different opinions as to higher goals, but these higher goals should be openly discussed. They shouldn't be covered with misleading proxies like economic development or economic growth. All these vague terms, misleading terms. All these misleading terms should also be criticized and openly discussed. The question is, what should economics students learn as the fundamental background? What is the required body of knowledge and experience? Because it's not only about theoretical knowledge, it's also about practical life experience if we are talking about sustainable well-being. The typical inquiries for sustainable well-being are: what are the most basic needs of people? We need to understand what people need. People from different countries, different cultures. How did people live considering different cultures and considering different cultural and environmental conditions? What kind of cultures and lifestyles are there? Because there's not only the Western lifestyle with lots of buildings, lots of cars, lots of roads, lots of equipment. There are different lifestyles and different definitions of progress. It's not only about Western ideology of progress in a certain direction. How did these cultures and lifestyles evolve? We need to understand the evolution of cultures and societies to understand what makes a society sustainable or unsustainable. It's very important for a sustainable economic system. Further questions. What makes people happy or unhappy? What kind of policies are required for the happiness of the majority, including, again, the future generations? So, because we don't want to steal wealth from future generations, or we don't want to steal life from future generations in the name of economic development or growth. What kind of technologies serve to the well-being of the majority? What kind of technologies serve only to the interests of the minority? What makes a technology sustainable or unsustainable. So we need to be aware of the fact that technologies can have side effects or externalities. And looking at all these inquiries, I come to the conclusion that evolutionary anthropology, I mean holistic anthropology, cultural and biological, should be at the basis of economics education. And this is, in a sense, ecology in the broad and deep sense. So as Thorsten Veblen said, economics should be an evolutionary human science.